Tonight, someone near you will die. Not close, maybe, not someone you know, but somewhere in your city, a person will take their last breath. And somewhere else, people who loved them will have absolutely no idea what to do next. They will stand around a body and feel a pressure so ancient, so deep, that it bypasses language entirely. They will need to do something. They just won't know why. That feeling has a history, a very long one. For most of human existence, death was not a medical event. It was not paperwork. It was not a call to a funeral home. Death happened in the open, in the dirt, in the dark, and the people left behind had to respond to it with nothing but their hands and whatever they believed. And what they did, the specific, deliberate, sometimes extraordinary things they did, tells you something urgent about who you are right now. You are not the first human to stand next to a body and feel the weight of it. The earliest evidence of deliberate burial comes from a cave in South Africa called Border Cave. Around 74,000 years ago, a very small child was laid into the earth, wrapped or cradled with care, and placed alongside what researchers believe was a seashell, a single shell beside a child. That detail stops you cold when you think about it. Someone picked it up, someone chose it. That is not instinct. That is grief made physical. But here's the part that rewrites everything you think you know about ancient humans. Border Cave is not an anomaly. It is the beginning of a pattern that stretches across every continent, every climate, and every era of human existence. Paleoanthropologist Francesco De Rico and his colleagues have spent years documenting this across excavation sites around the world, and the conclusion is unavoidable. Deliberate burial, care for the dead, predates civilization by tens of thousands of years. It may even predate modern humans entirely. In 2015, a team led by Lee Berger announced the discovery of Homo naledi, a small-brained hominin whose remains were found deep inside the Rising Star cave system in South Africa. The placement was deliberate. The chamber was inaccessible. There was no evidence of predator activity, no flood deposits that might explain how the bodies got there. The most parsimonious explanation is that they were carried in, intentionally, by creatures whose brains were a third the size of yours. This finding shook the field because it meant that the impulse to honor the dead did not emerge with language, with agriculture, or with complex symbolic thought. It emerged earlier, much earlier. It may be as old as the genus Homo itself. So why? Why would early humans expend precious energy carrying a body into a difficult cave or digging into hard earth with nothing but sticks and hands? The simple answer is that death is socially destabilizing. When a member of a small band dies, particularly a leader or a provider, the entire group is at risk. Evolutionary anthropologist Kim Sterelny has argued that early mortuary behavior served a social cohesion function. The ritual of burial forced the group to pause, to gather, to acknowledge a shared loss. It created a moment of collective attention that reinforced the bonds between the living. In a world where cooperation was survival, grief was not a weakness. Grief was infrastructure. But there is a second answer underneath that one, and it is stranger. Ancient humans buried their dead with objects, consistently, obsessively even. At Sanghir, a site outside Moscow, researchers uncovered the 30,000-year-old graves of an adult man and 2 children. The man was buried with more than 3,000 mammoth ivory beads, laid out in patterns that suggest they were once sewn onto clothing. The children were buried head to head, surrounded by fox teeth, ivory carvings, and 2 straightened mammoth femurs over 2 meters long. These were not practical offerings. These were statements. Someone spent weeks, possibly months, creating these objects. Someone decided that the dead needed them for something, that something is the oldest idea your mind still carries. Across every culture ever studied, the belief appears. The idea that death is not an ending but a transition, that the person who just stopped breathing is going somewhere, and that what they take with them matters. Cognitive scientist Pascal Boyer has studied afterlife beliefs across unconnected cultures and found that the same core concept emerges independently again and again In societies that had zero contact with each other, the dead persist. They have needs. They can be reached. The details change. Some cultures bury, some cremate, some expose, some mummify. But the underlying architecture is identical. You are not just disposing of a body, you're sending someone off. And your brain is wired for exactly this. Psychologist Jesse Bering conducted a series of experiments asking people of all religious backgrounds to reason about what happens to mental states after death. Even self-described atheists and skeptics consistently reason as if the dead person still has some form of awareness. Asked whether a dead person would know it was dark inside their coffin, people hesitated. Their instincts said yes. This is not a failure of logic. This is a feature of how your mind models other minds. You are so good at simulating what other people think and feel that you cannot fully turn it off, even when you know, rationally, medically, that the other person is gone. You keep running the simulation. The dead person keeps existing inside your head. Ancient humans almost certainly experienced the same thing. The dead appeared in dreams. Their faces were seen at the edge of firelight. Their voice was heard in wind or water. And when that happened, the obvious conclusion was not that the brain had malfunctioned. It was that the person was still present, still nearby, still in need of acknowledgement. This is why the graves get more elaborate over time. At Jebel Sahaba in Sudan, roughly 13,000 years ago, a cemetery of over 60 individuals shows signs of repeated return visits. Some graves were reopened, objects were added. The relationship between the living and the dead was not severed at the moment of burial. It was ongoing. Archaeologist Christopher Knussel describes this as a kind of continuing bond, a concept that modern grief therapists now recognize as healthy and normal. The idea that grief ends at burial, that you are supposed to move on and stop talking to the dead, is a very recent invention, and the evidence suggests it is a bad one. For most of human history, the dead stayed in the community. Some cultures kept the bones of ancestors in the home. Some fed the graves. Some left seasonal offerings for years, for decades. The Neanderthals, a separate species, not your direct ancestors but close cousins, may have placed flowers in graves at Shanidar Cave in Iraq, based on pollen evidence found in and around the burial site, though this interpretation remains contested. What is not contested is that Neanderthal dead were buried with deliberate positioning, sometimes curled in what looks like a sleeping pose. Someone straightened the limbs, someone chose the posture. That care had intention behind it. And here is the thing that lands hardest. That care did not require belief in anything specific. It did not require religion or language or a theory of the afterlife. It required only one thing, the recognition that this person mattered, that their absence created a shape in the world, that something needed to be done, even if no one could fully explain why. You still feel that. At funerals you attend out of obligation, for people you barely knew, you feel it, in the strange compulsion to clean the house of someone who has died, or keep their phone number in your contacts, or leave their favorite chair exactly where it is. That is not sentimentality. That is 74,000 years of neural architecture, tuned by evolution and culture together, reminding you that the relationship does not end just because the body does. The ancient humans who buried that child in Border Cave with a shell were not primitive. They were not less than you. They were doing exactly what you would do, what you will do, what the weight of the moment will demand of you, whether you are ready or not. Tonight, somewhere, people will stand around a body. They will not know what to do. And then, without thinking, they will start to do it. They will cover and gather and bring objects that meant something. They will create a small ceremony out of almost nothing. And in that moment, they will be doing exactly what your ancestors did 74,000 years ago in a cave in South Africa, with a shell they chose because something in them knew it mattered. You never stop burying your dead with care. You just forgot how old that instinct is.